Welcome to Fantastic Vision. The eyes to explore more latest technological news. US companies have the world's leading chip technology, and it is not difficult to find that almost all processors on mobile phones and PCs are supplied by US companies. Qualcomm's Snapdragon processors sell well all over the world, and Intel's Core processors are also sought after by PC enthusiasts around the world. But good products also have to be supported by demand. American companies are facing the dilemma of chip orders and layoffs. At this time, they begin to invite Chinese companies to buy chips. What is the direction for Chinese companies to develop chips? Inventory status of US companies. Chips have become the cornerstone of scientific and technological development, and countries are pursuing top-level scientific and technological strength, so the attention to chips has become more and more high. Just like the United States intends to return the chip manufacturing industry, it has offered a subsidy of $52 billion to invite TSMC to build a factory, and facilitated the investment projects of Intel and Micron Technology of $100 billion. The same is true of Japan and South Korea. The former also invited TSMC to build a factory, and the latter set a target of 50% chip self-sufficiency, which it intends to achieve by 2030, during which tens of thousands of semiconductor engineers will be trained. Looking at China again, from setting a 70% chip self-sufficiency rate to integrating integrated circuits as a first-level discipline, and then to the establishment of integrated circuit colleges in major universities, all kinds of actions indicate that domestic semiconductors are moving towards better direction forward. Therefore, some chips are gradually put into domestic production, and production needs are met through the domestic semiconductor supply chain. As the number of self-produced chips increases, the number of imported chips decreases. From January to August this year, Chinese companies cut orders for 54 billion chip imports. Since most of the chips were purchased from US companies, after reducing the number of chip imports, the inventory situation of US companies began to highlight a series of problems. The most important thing is that the inventory level has increased, and it is facing the pressure of destocking. This is only second. The key is that the sales channels of US companies are affected by the rules, and not all chips can be sold. It happens that these unsellable chips are exactly what customers need, and other chips that can be shipped are not the most advanced technology products, so there is already a certain amount of inventory on the market, and there is no need for large-scale purchases. Not being able to sell chips at will is not the original intention of US companies, but since they choose to abide by the rules, they have to face the corresponding consequences. Unsustainable US companies are facing the dilemma of cutting orders and layoffs. For example, Qualcomm has reduced the amount of film production to TSMC, and Intel plans to lay off thousands of people in November. And Nvidia is selling excess graphics cards at low prices and has begun to invite Chinese companies. The specific performance is that Nvidia pushes other products that can be sold freely, and believes that there are still a large number of products that can continue to be sold. Another meaning of Nvidia is to invite Chinese companies to buy other chips to provide sales guarantees for reducing inventory. From this point of view, the ending is very clear: US companies cannot leave China's huge consumer market. In fact, most of the US companies have 1/3 of their revenue from the Chinese market, and Chinese customers are the first thing that comes to mind in order to solve the inventory pressure. What US companies did not expect was that low-end and mid-range chips were gradually being produced domestically, while demand for high-end chips was weak. If things go on like this, it may not be so easy for US companies to destock smoothly. It can only be said that US companies are suffering a series of chain reactions for the rules, and whether they can survive depends on the US companies themselves. The trend of Chinese enterprises developing chips. Buying and selling are mutual, and there can be no only buyer or seller in business, but the buyer's market is huge, and there are certain conditions to evolve into a seller, forming a self-produced and self-sold situation. If the chips are made by themselves, the seller's market will not only lose the current sales in the future, but also the broad market future. Because the development of chips by Chinese companies is moving in the direction of self-research. In terms of design, domestic first-tier mobile phone manufacturers have set up projects of self-developed chips, carried out chip design work, and achieved remarkable achievements. For example, Xiaomi has launched for Surging series chips, Vivo also has its own V1 image chip, and OPPO's Mariana X continues to lead the breakthrough in mobile phone imaging. Although these chips are still in the mode of small chips, as long as they continue to develop firmly, it will be a possibility to do SoC in the future. In addition, Huadao Jiutian has achieved a breakthrough in the analog full process system in the 28 nanometers process, and has the conditions to provide EDA chip design tools for domestic manufacturers. Design is the source of the chip industry. Only when chips are designed can the orders required by the manufacturing industry be formed. In terms of manufacturing, SMIC is building for fabs. After the factory is completed in the future, the 28 nanometers process can be used to meet the chip needs of consumer electronics and smart cars. Moreover, as a foundry, SMIC will usher in more order support due to the accelerated process at the design level. 70% of SMIC's revenue comes from China. Judging from the fact that SMIC maintains revenue growth, its choice to bet on the domestic chip foundry market is correct. As long as more capacity can be provided and it meets the process needs of the design manufacturer, the buyer's market will do what the seller's market needs to do. It is estimated that it is aware of this, so American Semiconductor is anxious to ship chips and expresses its willingness to cooperate. From the perspective of the market, cooperation is naturally the best choice for a win-win situation. It depends on how the rules go, so that the market can return to the previous order. China has a very large consumer demand for chips and imports more than $300 billion of chips every year, which attracts many foreign suppliers to do business in China. Business is always going back and forth, but if someone disrupts the globalization of chips, it is up to the buyer's market to decide which direction the market will develop. What do you think about this? Feel free to share in the comments below.